What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Super excited to be here. We're going to do a fun stream today. Cyberpunk 2077 launches 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow night, we're going to be streaming it in North America. So it's going to be super fun. Today, I thought it would be really fun if we all hung out and watched some of the awesome early reviews that are out. Some of my favorite YouTubers got the chance to play the game early. So I thought that it would be cool if we watch some of them together and get some different opinions. I saved 4 or 5 different videos in a playlist, and yeah, we'll watch the reviews together, get their opinions since they got to play the game, and yeah, we'll get hype. I am super friggin' excited for Cyberpunk to drop. I think it's like 8 years I've been waiting for this game, 7 or 8 years now. So this is my most anticipated game of basically forever, and I'm super excited that it's finally dropping tomorrow. It really drops on December 10th for everyone, but tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll have the game preloaded with the patch and everything, and we'll be going 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be streaming Cyberpunk tomorrow night, so it's going to be super fun. I see some awesome people in chat. I just want to say hello to, let me scroll up here, The Real YT, what's up? Yeah, I didn't get the special edition. I was late to the party on that. 250 big ones for that is pretty steep, but I just got the regular version, the digital version, for my PS5. Of course, the next gen versions of Cyberpunk for the Xbox Series X and PS5 aren't out yet. So it's the PS4 version that streams on the PS5, but it still looks like the best next generation game yet. Kate Bertinsky, Rick Hoppy, Anthony Shaddix, I see, Robbie Meeson, Nicola. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Do we just want to jump into it and just watch the reviews right now? What do we want to sit and chat? I haven't had my coffee today. I think I might wait on that for a little bit, but yeah, I'm stoked. I am so friggin' excited to play Cyberpunk. I don't know if you guys know how excited I am. Is anybody else in the chat going to be playing Cyberpunk? It seems like Robbie, I know, you're probably interested in playing that. Anybody else going to be playing Cyberpunk in the chat? Vlad, anybody else pre-ordered this thing? Because, damn, I'm friggin' excited. It's just so great, right? We get Cyberpunk in December. We got The Mandalorian, the next 2 episodes. The Expanse is dropping. Then we got WandaVision in January. Good things are starting to drop. So, yeah, let's get into it. I got a playlist saved here. Let's start with Young. Yeah, let's just get into this reaction.
How long have we waited? 8 years? 2012 was, I believe, when they first announced the game. It's surreal that the game's finally here, that I've played it, that I've rolled credits on it. And let me tell you, the substance of the game blew me away and lived up to my hype. I am in love with what I experienced with this title, and as a huge fan of the cyberpunk genre and CD Projekt Red's work and the marriage of the two, this has lived up to be sort of a game of my dreams as a cyberpunk fanatic. On the other hand, quick disclaimer, for this December 7th review embargo period, I am not allowed to show you my own gameplay footage. I can only use footage provided by CD Projekt Red, and it's not particularly super useful footage. It's B-roll that's cinematically shot, but isn't really fully representative of actual gameplay. I'm allowed to show you my own gameplay on December 9th, which is the day the game comes out in certain regions, and this really doesn't sit well with me. This feels dishonest, as it feels like CD Projekt Red is trying to hide some of the buggy elements of the game that I would like to show you guys because I feel like it's important for you to know, but I'm not allowed to until the day that the game launches in certain regions. I can talk about it.
So one thing just to note, Chad, before we move forward, the early review copies usually goes out to press like IGN, GameSpot, other independent people like Yang. Yeah, he has a huge YouTube channel. I think like couple million subscribers, and they only sent PC copies out, so nobody has played the console. Well, I'm sure people have played the console version, but nobody has had the review copies. And there have been bugs and stuff. Apparently, there's a huge day one patch. So that's concerning, right? Because they were on a time crunch and stuff like that. But they've been playing the PC version of it. So we got the PS5 version, right? We got it for the PS5. We don't have the PC version. Who knows? Maybe we'll end up getting a PC copy at some point. But we got the PS5. We're going to play the PS5, the PC for the streaming. Then we'll have a nice setup. We'll have the PS5 for the game capture, and then we'll have the PC for the streaming. So it'll just go more smoothly as opposed to having like a dual PC stream, which I don't have. I don't have a second PC to do the stream, but just for clarification purposes, that he does have the PC copy.
I would just not show you, and just in general, there's not going to be a lot of gameplay footage in this video because of these restrictions. And look, I didn't expect this game to be perfect. I knew there were going to be some bugs, but I do feel as though the bugs that I found were constant and persistent and at times disruptive enough where it is worth highlighting and warning people about. Now, CD Projekt Red did release a mid-review patch that improved on certain aspects, and they did tell me that this was a partial version of the Day Zero patch that the public is gonna get, but at the same time, even after the patch, some of the issues that I experienced persisted. I'm not sure how big of a difference the final version of the patch will make. We'll find out. We'll see, I suppose. And I'll talk about the technical issues later in the video. Just know that on December 9th, I will be launching a part 2 to this review, showing my own gameplay footage to spotlight both the things that I really loved about this game and the technical issues that I encountered. But with that warning out of the way, let's talk about the experience itself, which, you know, it really did take my breath away in many regards. Let's start with story. This is the element that I want to talk least about for obvious reasons. What I will say is that I was truly blown away by the storytelling and writing in this game. One of the key elements of the Cyberpunk tabletop RPG that the game's based off of is the idea that you're not out there as a cyberpunk or edge runner to save the world. You're out there to save yourself, to save your soul, or maybe the soul of others. This is something that CD Projekt Red clearly took to heart because Cyberpunk 2077 captures that very well with its core narrative. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of epic moments and set pieces with really awesome heist, chase, and action sequences, but at its core, this feels like a very deeply personal story that asks questions about what it means to be alive, what it means to be human, what it means to be free in a dark future where technology allows the top 1% to play God among other conundrums. You know, in the marketing materials, we have seen a lot of the loud moments of Cyberpunk, but they've actually shown very little of the quieter, contemplative, more personal moments, and those moments are here aplenty, which I was really pleased about. One of the things that I appreciate most about this game from a narrative standpoint is that they know how to take their time with key moments and scenes. There are long stretches of time where you won't fire a single bullet, you're just talking to people, making choices, picking dialogue, and it's all incredibly well executed. And even within dialogue, there are plenty of moments where characters will just kind of contemplate and sit silently before saying their next thing, and CD Projekt Red just really knows how to add dramatic effect, and the conversations as a result feel more natural, more human, more real. The game can often feel like this first-person interactive movie, one with incredible attention to detail. The narrative in this game just in general was thought-provoking, asking a lot of interesting philosophical questions associated with the cyberpunk genre with, I thought, great nuance, with decision-making that tends to lie in some kind of gray area. No choice has a correct answer. It's more about actions and consequences and what your view of the world is and what you want out of it as V, the protagonist of this game. And depending on the choices you make, the relationships you build through side quests, you do get to unlock multiple endings. And there are some that are more hopeful. There are others that are darker and more questionable. But it's all really fantastic, really complex, really well weaved together. And beyond the main quest, CD Projekt Red is known for their ability to create truly compelling side quests and smaller scale stories, and 2077 is no different in that regard. I mean, some of the
That's super sweet. I'm super excited about that. That means this game is going to have replayability. Remember, you can play as a street kid, a nomad, or a corpo to start off. So you got like three different starting points, right? And apparently, he's going to talk about this. I think the game's prologue is apparently 5 to 6 hours, so it gets you used to all the mechanics and the world and stuff like that. So that's really sweet. The ability to have different endings, different playthroughs, different decisions, right? When you're playing an RPG like this, you have multiple choice options, like, dialogue options. You do certain things in the game that may unlock dialogue options later on with certain characters, or may not. You may kill a character or do something that has consequences. So that's what I'm so excited about this game, the multiplicity. And, kind of, just the endless possibility, really, to play it all sorts of different ways. So super sweet that's going to be happening in Cyberpunk.
The side activities you partake in will be simple mercenary work, steal something, kill someone, find some info. But there are some side quests that really deliver some really effective personal stories with lengthy narrative threads. And then there are also side quests that are really goofy and really funny, making some references that many of you will recognize, or showing cameos that I won't spoil that just had me in stitches. And I did find a decent variety of activities too, with story-driven main and side quests never feeling generic. Everything just feels really handcrafted. While there is some repetition in the gameplay loop, as with any game, it's a matter of how does a game find a way to keep it fresh, and Cyberpunk does so through compelling new narrative threads, compelling stories, and also through the player progression that kind of makes you feel more powerful and develops the style of play over time. I also really love the dynamic between the main character V and his companion Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves. I'm going to tell you right now, Johnny Silverhand, he is, I would say, the other side to V's coin in this game. He's not, I wouldn't even say a supporting character. I'd go as far as calling him a second protagonist. The two are forced together by, shall we say, unfortunate circumstances, but there's a bond there that develops over time, over the course of the campaign, and it's really compelling, and I really grew fond of Johnny Silverhand, who comes off as this hardened kind of jerk and dickwad, to be honest, but those walls, those barriers start breaking down, and you get to know him more. You get to understand why he's the way he is, and it's simply phenomenal. Also, if you're a fan of the Cyberpunk lore from the tabletop RPG, the amount of fan service here, the good kind, is really unbelievable. Just so many familiar faces, plenty of callbacks to the 2020s era, and even before that, exploration of past events that contextualize current events, and inversely, 2077's story makes you look at past events in the Cyberpunk lore under a different light. I really don't want to say much more than that. The blinder you go into this game, the better you'll be off. I think a lot of people will be very pleased. Even if you're not familiar with the Cyberpunk lore, this tells a very effective Cyberpunk story that...
I just have to say that Keanu Reeves is a superstar, okay? Keanu Reeves is one of the best actors on the planet. He's played the game himself and said he loves it. That's fantastic. That's really good news. But the fact that CD Projekt Red went out there and did something like Death Stranding did with Norman Reedus, they picked Keanu Reeves. They're like, this is the guy for the role of Johnny Silverhand. And I'm just so stoked about that. You know what I mean? The fact that we can associate with that in a video game, and how video games are getting closer and closer in movies. Young, referenced earlier how, cutscenes and specific parts of the narrative feel like a movie. And obviously with the PS5 and next generation games, we're getting graphically further and further along. So super exciting just to hear him say that, and the fact that however it happens, I have an idea of what might happen, but just super excited that basically we're going to have this kind of Cortana from Halo type of thing going on with Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk. So super excited about that. Deals
with a lot of personal issues, and I I loved the main campaign. Many of you will surely wonder how long this game is. It took me about 35 hours to beat my first playthrough, though keep in mind that I did focus a lot on the main quest to get this review done on time. After you beat the game, you can go back and do side quests, so that's what I decided to do, though I did do a decent amount of side quests along the way as well. I'd say about 25 hours of my playthrough was dedicated to main quests, and then 10 hours was for side quests. But by the time I was done with the campaign and went back to the open world, I had plenty of side quests that I have still left to do. I still have to go back to the game and finish more side quests. I don't know exactly how long the game would be if you complete everything. I think it'll generally take shorter to complete all of Cyberpunk's activities compared to Witcher 3. I spoke to another reviewer, SkillUp, who actually cleared more side quests than I did, and he suspected completing all of the game's main quests and major side quests, it would take roughly 55 to 60 hours, given that he has completed most of the major side quests in his quest log.
That seems really interesting, the amount of hours. For me, we're gonna do absolutely everything in the game. There's people who speed run through games, and I'm not really interested in that. We're gonna play it at the pace that we're gonna play it at. We're not going to rush it. We're going to get all the cool weapons. We're going to get all the cool gear. We're going to explore all of Night City. So yeah, I've seen other people who have review copies of the game saying, hey, like I played it for 100 hours. Some people say 40 hours. It all really depends on what kind of experience you want. That's completely unique to the gamer. And for here on the channel, for those of you that are going to be tuning in to the Cyberpunk playthrough, we're going to be playing, we're going to try to discover absolutely everything and try to maximize the amount of time we can in Night City. Obviously, The Witcher 3, if you're looking at The Witcher 3 map, it's humongous, right? Night City is Night City, so it's a little bit different as far as how contained it is, but I'm sure Yangya is going to talk about that. So, yeah, we're going to take our time in Cyberpunk.
Though I do want to personally spend more time doing side quests before I say for sure. I do hope that in part 2 of my review on December 9th, I'll be able to provide maybe a more accurate assessment of my own, but the campaign is shorter than Witcher 3's. CD Projekt Red has been open about that in the past, but it's a really tight campaign with really great narrative beats, and I was satisfied with that experience, and I can't wait to dive back and just do more stuff. There's still plenty of narrative threads that I have not touched, and plenty of quests that I kind of stopped halfway, and these side quests feel very handcrafted. They feel as cinematic as the main quest. It feels like a lot of love and care was put into the side quest as much as the main quest. All of the side quests, the major side quests, have felt substantial to me. There's also another factor to consider. The game does feel very replayable. I am already kind of interested in starting a new game, making different decisions with a different life path, and seeing how that affects how certain quests play out, or what new dialogue options open up and how that affects certain quests, and which additional endings I can unlock. The narrative is bolstered by the incredible presentation of this title. I know there are people out there who would have preferred to see, some kind of third-person perspective for this game, but after playing through this game in its entirety, the campaign at least, I didn't find myself missing a third-person perspective at all. In fact, I would say Cyberpunk 2077 makes some of the most effective use of a first-person perspective that I've ever seen in a video game from a presentation standpoint. There are no real cutscenes in this game because everything plays out seamlessly right in front of your eyes. A lot of cinematic moments happen right in front of your eyes without any camera transition and cuts. It's all kind of one shot almost. And the amount of animation work that is done is so extensive with so many nuanced details, like just seeing how characters do basic actions like sitting down on a chair. Instead of just a stock sit down animation, they'll kind of maybe relax like that and kind of brush their eyebrow a little bit, maybe put their hand on their face like that, and then move their hands as they talk. There's just so much little nuanced details that bring these characters to life, make them seem so lifelike. And a lot of the things that they do between the lines, the little animations that play, little ticks that characters have that feel different from other NPCs, all of that stuff culminates in some of the most immersive first-person perspective conversations and intense moments and scenes and sequences that I've experienced in any video game. And it makes for just a really cinematic first-person experience, and I genuinely believe that many scenes in this game would just straight up not be as effective or immersive in a third-person camera view with camera cuts and all that. You can look at your character in third person if you change camera perspectives when riding a vehicle like a car or a motorcycle. You can find mirrors around the world or in your apartment that you can look at to see your character in third person perspective. And there are very specific cutscenes that will play in third person. That's all I'll say about that. But for the most part, you're looking at a game that takes place pretty much almost entirely in first person and does a really good job with that perspective and really takes full advantage, as much advantage as possible, of that perspective. Not to mention that the graphics in this game are really impressive. The character models look really good, particularly under the right lighting conditions. The music in this game is seriously some of the best in the cyberpunk genre, used to great effect to establish just the right mood. Beyond the efforts that CD Projekt went to establish unique tracks for the game's radio, the background music, the original soundtrack that kicks in during combat, during key story beats, during tense moments, during quiet moments, during somber moments, it's all so incredibly well done. It's so very effective. And this is all elevated by the performances, which are spectacular across the board. And I know we've heard a lot of the sort of edgy attitude dialogue stuff in the trailers, but there are a lot of softer, more nuanced, quieter moments that are beautifully performed. So honestly, kudos to all of the actors across the board. And going back to graphics, I did play this game on ultra settings with ray tracing turned off because I found performance to be far less consistent with that on. And the game honestly looks about as good as what was shown in the marketing material. And the game...
Big shout out to you, Yormi. Hopefully, everything goes well with your brain scan. And saw it in a Nickelodeon. Does it come on PS5? I have a PS5. Yes. When you go into the Play Store or however you want to buy it, I got mine digitally, Nickelodeon. It will be the PS4 version. Okay. They don't have the next gen versions yet. It's fully optimized and everything. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's not going to take away from your experience, but the next gen versions are going to be coming out sometime next year. So it is playable on PS5. All of the current systems that are out, except for Nintendo Switch, won't be playing Cyberpunk, I believe. Stadia has it, PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series S, and the PS5 digital and disc. Those will be the platforms that'll be played on.
Gameplay presentations, it's really not far off at all from the gameplay that CD Projekt Red has put out there, and it pushes the boundaries of open world graphical fidelity, which I'll get to in a bit. And the game also does not hold back on the mature content, which I'm happy about. I feel like you really need that in the cyberpunk genre. The game is not afraid to delve into darker themes. Visually, there's just a lot of violence and a lot of bare flesh to be found, shall we say, but done in a way that I feel services the game's themes, narratives, the cyberpunk world, this setting. And
one thing that is being said, though, Nickelodeon, and I'm sure Young Yaz is going to talk about it here, is how amazing this game looks. I've been all over Twitter. I've been interacting with other people on Twitter, just talking about it. And I'm telling you, this game looks absolutely fantastic. Don't let what I said about it let you think that it's not next gen, because it looks next gen.
And the kind of dark future that this is, I mean, the character creator alone allows you to pick out options for breasts and genitals, and it's not censored at all. It's all there in full display as you're customizing those elements. But let's talk about the open world. My God, this open world. It is smaller than Witcher 3's from a surface area standpoint, from a volumetric standpoint, but it is significantly denser and more vertical. And if you ask me, This is, I think, the most detailed, most gorgeous, most handcrafted feeling open world I've ever seen in a video game. The aesthetic of it alone is intoxicating, but the scale of everything is what's especially impressive. It really does feel like you're inhabiting this cyberpunk metropolis. It's buzzing.
By the way, I think so you know how you have the 3 different life paths, the Nomad, the Street Kid, or the Corpo. I think I've decided on the Nomad. We're going to try the Nomad first, being kind of born outside of the city and then having to go in the city. I don't know, though. I find all 3 options really, really interesting. But chat, what do you think I should play as a Nomad, a Corpo, or a Street Kid? Let me know in the chat.
It feels lived in. There's so many details on every corner, and you look up and you see skyscrapers rising above you, overwhelming you, and all of these different sensory elements, from the soundscapes to the neon lights to just all of the different elements that makes up a cyberpunk world. It's all here. And interiors are equally detailed, going to clubs, going to rickety kind of shady apartment buildings, or high-class fancy places within corporate buildings. All of that is so meticulously crafted. You can just really feel the amount of research that went into it, the amount of painstaking attention to detail that was applied. And when you're outside of the city looking at it from far away, it really looks gorgeous, especially at nighttime, where it really gives off that Blade Runner vibe. And then you zoom into Night City and you look at the unique attire that people wear on the streets, the vehicle designs, the unique semi-futuristic weapons, the different gangs, and the different cultures that are evoked through them. It's all incredibly meticulous and passion-filled work. Not once.
Yeah, Anthony, there's all sorts of different cars, motorbikes, all sorts of stuff. It's going to be absolutely insane.
That I feel that any one section of the world was generically thrown together. Every corner feels handcrafted with love and care on a level that is just rare to see in a video game. Whether it's day or night, whether you're walking on foot, zooming past with vehicles you've purchased or stolen, or whether you're in the air during some of the scripted aerial vehicle sequences, it all just looks so freaking incredible. And navigating the world feels really good, you know, running around, vaulting over obstacles and driving vehicles, all of that works perfectly fine. The one issue that I had was that with keyboard and mouse controls, I could not find the option to toggle walking. I was always running. With a controller, you can just kind of tilt the analog stick and define your speed of movement. With keyboard and mouse, though, there's usually a button to toggle that, and I could not find that toggle for the keyboard and mouse control. So I was always running around, and sometimes, you know, when I was following a character during a quest, I'd have to move and stop because they were walking, but I was like running and stopping, and that was kind of strange. So I wish they would have added that. But that aside, navigating through Night City felt like an absolute pleasure. Looking at the map of this game, it can be overwhelming just how much there is to do at any given time. You kind of get flooded with a lot of side activities from the outset. After completing the intro portion of the game, people are going to be constantly calling you to hire you for new jobs. And as your reputation improves, as your street cred increases, you'll get more and more calls from different people who have been hearing about your endeavors, and before you know it, your quest log is gonna start to look quite full. This being cyberpunk, it is of course a dangerous world, and the rule of the land is survival of the fittest, and that's where the game's combat mechanics come in. I was actually really surprised to find that the shooting mechanics in this game feel really fantastic. Cyberpunk has always been advertised as an RPG first, so I thought shooting would feel fine, would feel adequate, but it ended up feeling much better than I expected. All of the guns really pack a punch due to a combination of great sound design combined with punchy visuals, the variety of weapons, and some of the insane designs, like, I don't know, a shotgun with 8 barrels with bullets that track and stuff like that. I mean, that all contributes to weapons that are really interesting to obtain and explore. This being an RPG, I was also worried that enemies would be really bullet spongy, but after leveling up a few times, that was not the case at all. Once you start leveling up and concentrating on the things that you want to focus on for your playstyle, I was able to off enemies relatively quickly, especially as someone who played stealthily and, you know, dealt headshots with a silent pistol. That was really satisfying, and there are bonuses that
Vibes, to your question, can we still play after we beat the game? you I don't know if you were here earlier for the earlier part of the review. It was like, I think like, maybe 12 or 11 minutes in, but Young Ya said he beat the game and then went back and did stuff. So you can beat the game and still go back. So yeah.
Come with stealth attacks. So all of that contributed to me being able to essentially kill everyone with one shot to the head as long as I stayed hidden. Now, much like Witcher 3, if you see an enemy who has a skull sign over their head, that means they're much higher level than you, and those guys are more bullet spongy. And then there are boss battles in the game who have health bars, and you have to shoot them quite a bit before you kill them. But for the most part, you're fighting regular goons, and the game's really well balanced in terms of how many shots it takes to take them down. And another major aspect to combat is hacking, which is kind of the equivalent to magic in fantasy RPGs. You have a certain amount of RAM that generates over time, and RAM is the resource used to execute these hacks, and you can upgrade your RAM through cybernetic implants, through skill upgrades, you name it. You'll also be upgrading how fast that RAM recovers, how many programs or spells, if you will, you can equip at any given time. My character wasn't leaning too heavily on hacking, but I did use hacking frequently enough, especially one program that I favored, which offered the ability for me to essentially blind enemy cybernetic optics, which worked wonders for my stealth build. And then another useful hacking ability was called Ping, which essentially tagged all enemies connected to a particular network, which allowed me to gauge their position and their patrol patterns. But there are other types of hacks as well, like short circuit and synapse burnout, which deal damage to machines and humans respectively. There is one program that allowed me to wipe an enemy's memory so that they would drop their aggro. You can jam their weapons, disable their cyberware, among other things. And you can also quick hack environmental objects to distract enemies, take over cameras to get a better view, unlock certain doors, interact with certain elements that can damage nearby enemies, you name it. Now, there are some gripes that I do have with the game's combat system, a major one being the way they mapped dodging. You kind of do a sidestep or a dash by double tapping a direction. When playing with keyboard and mouse, and especially when playing stealthily, I often make these minor adjustments while I'm, crouching and sneaking, where I, tap, tap, tap like that, so the character kind of inches his way towards a destination. And sometimes when I did that, the game would register those taps as me wanting to dodge. And so there were a number of times where I revealed my location, where I revealed myself to enemies by accident because my character dodged instead of moving slowly as I intended. So I wish there was a way to change that. I haven't found a way to change that. I wish you could remap that differently. Another gripe that I had was that you cannot do certain simple things like removing a gun silencer without going to the game's cluttered inventory menu. Removing the silencer takes multiple steps, and the same thing goes for using certain consumable items. Items in this game cannot be mapped to the numbers button, which I find to be strange. 1, 2, and 3 are reserved for your primary, secondary, and tertiary weapons, but you cannot use 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. And map those to other elements. And inventory management.
Just again, people, there's been no console reviews yet out there, so these are all PC reviews.
In general, while functional, could feel like it could have been implemented in a more organized, more intuitive, and more accessible way. I eventually kind of got used to it, but sometimes it can feel like doing simple actions can take more steps than they should. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the game's melee combat, as the melee impacts don't feel super impactful. It all feels kind of loose, like you're swinging air. I did find rushing enemies with my katana and slaying them in kind of samurai ninja fashion to be pretty fun, but when you engage in one-on-one melee combat, that's when melee is serviceable, like it works, but it doesn't feel particularly good, and it isn't a playstyle that I would deeply favor as a result. Just melee felt nowhere near as good as gunplay in my opinion, which is a shame because melee is a big component of combat and progression. You could do a full-on melee.
You can get like, he's got a katana in the background. I'm pretty sure we get a katana and some I think like a Witcher 3 jacket. I think I signed up for like the extra goodies part of it properly, hopefully. But yeah, like there's going to be a whole melee aspect of it where you can do like hand-to-hand combat with like katanas, or you get like cybernetics implanted into your arm and stuff like that. So not only is there going to be stealth gameplay, there's going to be melee combat, and there's also going to be gun gameplay. So there'll be all sorts of different styles. And I think he'll probably explain this more. He's got what, character progressions. So there's still a big part he's going to talk
melee build if you wanted to, but melee doesn't quite live up to how good shooting feels.
And vibes, yes. The answer is yes to your question.
Speaking of progression, though, I really love what they did with the progression system of this game because there are just so many layers and there's always so much character progression happening. You're always getting stronger. The first layer is, of course, gear, of which you'll find plenty as you engage enemies in combat, as you complete quests. There's just so much.
Oh man, there's gonna be tons of loot. That's
Much
a really
loot in
good
this
sign.
game. Every enemy you drop basically drops something, whatever weapon they were holding, and other things like consumables, things that heal you and whatnot, euro dollars, money, you name it. And each room you clear as well also just has a lot of stuff to loot on shelves, on boxes and everything. Sometimes it can be too much to loot, though you eventually get to a point where you have such high level gear that you can ignore a lot of the loot. But all of that loot can be useful because you can disassemble the junk that you pick up or the weapons that you don't use, and you can convert those into crafting materials that will allow you to craft new items by obtaining blueprints for those items, or upgrade your old gear so that you can make those, the ones that you prefer from, when you were lower level, viable for high
You can upgrade your favorite gear. That's so dope. So like, let's say you get an early level weapon that you think is really cool. You can level it up with you as you go through the game. That's so fucking cool.
Level stuff. But yeah, the game can feel like a looter shooter in many regards because of how much loot there is in this game. You will find different weapons and armor of varying rarities, and the higher the rarity, the more mod slots and additional features to those particular weapons and armor. And you'll find weapons that are of the same brand but maybe different rarities and the like. But this is of course excluding the shitty life service monetization elements that would ruin it or get in the way. So it's a lot of fun. Now, a layer on top of gear is the fact that some of the weapons and clothes that you obtain will have mod slots that will allow you to insert cybernetic chips that grant additional passive upgrades and adds an additional layer of customizability. And then for guns in particular, you can on top of that add attachments like scopes and silencers, though not much more than that. All I've seen are pretty much scopes and silencers. So that's gears and gear mods and gear attachments. Then you got the second layer, which is leveling up, which contributes to your attributes, your skills, and your perks. There are 5 attributes in this game, each of which house a number of skills, each of which house a
Chat, this game is gonna be so friggin' good. Oh my god.
ton of perks, so many perks, and leveling up will grant you an attribute point and a perk point to spend. And on top of all that, skills themselves level up individually as you partake in activities associated with that skill, kind of like Skyrim when you
Ralph, you says, Kyle, will you be streaming or doing a let's play of this game? Yeah. Hell yeah. So you kidding me? We're gonna play through the whole goddamn thing, Ralph. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. North America, New York time, Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. We're going to be streaming Cyberpunk. Like 7 p.m. Like we'll probably hang out for half an hour before just to make sure everything goes right and stuff like that. But tomorrow night, I'm streaming Cyberpunk, people.
use one-handed a lot. You're one.
Mandalorian videos will be happening, Expanse stuff will be happening, but Cyberpunk is going to be the main thing on the channel. I don't care. I want to play this game, and I want to grow gaming on the channel. We're playing this shit.
One-handed levels up. In Cyberpunk, if you use a lot of pistols, your handguns level up. If you use a lot of blades, your blades will level up. If you do a lot of stealth kills, your stealth will gain XP and level up. You get the idea. And leveling up skills comes with its own benefits. You gain bonuses as your skill level goes up, whether it's extra perk points or just extra damage, extra bonuses. And all of this contributes to the fact that certain actions will involve skill checks. So for example, there are certain dialogue options that will only open up if your attributes are up a certain level. And then beyond dialogue, you've got things like how if you want to lockpick certain doors, you need a certain amount of technical ability attribute. And also to disable mines, technical ability comes into play. If you have a high level in the body attribute, you can rip certain doors open, or you can steal certain cars, so on and so forth. There are plenty of skill checks to go around. So we've got gear, we've got leveling up. The third layer is cyberware, which can be obtained via Ripper Docs, these black market surgeons essentially.
Oh my god. Look, chat, let's just take a second. Breathe it in and look at these menus. Oh my God, look at how sweet it looks. Look at the customization. Immune system, nervous system, integumentary, I can't say that, ocular system, frontal cortex, operating system, skeleton, hands, arms. Like, holy shit. Like, this is so friggin' cool, man. I am so stoked for this.
And those grant additional bonuses and new abilities that you can essentially slot in and out based on your playstyle and preferences. And Cyberware comes with their own mod slots for even more passive upgrades and customizability. So there's just so much going on here. And compared to Witcher 3, Cyberpunk feels much more customizable when it comes to playstyle. You can go full, you know, balls to the walls, Rambo mode. You can go stealthy. You can go hacking. And I'm curious to try more playstyles as I do additional playthroughs. I had the great satisfaction of developing a stealthy build for my first playthrough. I focused on silenced pistols for the stealth element, and it was just satisfying to build my character that way and see that progression through a combination of attributes, skills, perks, and cyberware dedicated to that build. I was popping off headshots and doing a ridiculous...
Yormi, he already confirmed that fat loots are 100% part of the game. There's no microtransactions in this one.
Amount of crit damage, and it was just fantastic. So the progression system of this game, the leveling system, the gear, the rewards, all of that I think CD Projekt Red absolutely nailed on the head. So you've got all of the right ingredients to make this one of the most memorable, one of the most incredible, jaw-dropping, just unforgettable open world RPG experiences. And for a nerd of the cyberpunk genre, again, this is a dream come true in many regards.
Woo-hoo! Oh, there's an ad.
Test of a person's true value.
It's funny that we're getting a cyberpunk ad. Let's watch it, actually.
Facing it, staring it down. Johnny, I got you. Pressure's tanking.
It's neurogenic shock. He's dying.
V, you in there? My head.
We're gonna get
So what now?
demonetized, but I don't care.
Now.
We're watching this shit.
You find out what it is you need to do.
A thing of beauty, I know.
You've never backed down from anything in your life, even when you maybe should have.
My God, this
You
game
go
looks
through
incredible!
Night City knowing a stray bullet could end you while hailing a cab. But that's never stopped you from taking action.
You believe you cheated death. It is death that has cheated you.
If you gotta kill, kill. If you gotta burn it all to the ground, then let it burn.
Tell me! On the ground, asshole! Don't move!
Out of my house! No!
Will never fade away. What you did to me, I know. Somehow I find a way, but I think of beauty.
Would you rather live in peace as Mr. Nobody or go down for all time in a blaze of glory?
So good.
Will never fade away.
But then come the bugs, which brings down the game a couple notches. If the bugs weren't there, this would just be a masterful game. It is unfortunately unpolished in the state that I play the game in. And again, we'll see what happens with a full day zero patch instead of the partial one that reviewers were given. So the most annoying and consistent issue that I've encountered was weapons that floated in the air after I killed enemies or after I dropped a weapon. While all of that stuff didn't break the game, it was very much immersion breaking with it happening constantly. After a major firefight, for example, after I cleared a room full of enemies, the room would be littered with floating weapons, and even when I would loot those weapons, the weapon models would stay suspended in the air, so they were kind of there permanently. Now, what's interesting is that after the mid-review patch came out, I noticed that it made no difference for my Corpo save file, which was made before that patch. But then I started a new game as a street kid, and a couple hours in, I found no weapon floating issues. So it seems as though the fact that I made a new save after the patch released fixed the issue for that playthrough, for that save file. So it is entirely possible that if you start a new game after you've implemented the day zero patch, you won't encounter this issue at all. Beyond that,
Now, just to clarify again, this was PC version of the game. And I believe now people haven't got the console early review versions, I believe, because they're still working to this hour to iron out as many things as possible. So I do think that the console version, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be smoother than the PC version. I don't know. Hopefully they both get fixed. Regardless, I want everyone to have a good experience, but it is concerning that there's bugs.
Encountered a number of first-person animation glitches where, drawing weapons would glitch from time to time, like the gun and hand animations would not align properly. The hand would come up and then the weapon would come up like that from my shoulder and then position itself on the hand. And then there would be times when I'm hacking and jacking in with the cable on my wrist where the hand and the cable would be misaligned, and so the visuals didn't quite match up. And then jacking out, sometimes, I would jack out and the weapon would float out of the blue onto my hands, and just a lot of visual elements that were distracting. I encountered plenty of issues with NPCs, a good amount of occasions where I found NPCs T-posing, spazzing out, walking back and forth, floating in the air, popping in and out. Sometimes their animations would bug out while walking, so they'd hover in the air in weird positions instead of, their usual walking animation. During quests, sometimes NPCs would teleport to their next position rather than walk to it as they would normally. AI sometimes...
Yeah, real man. We just actually watched that trailer. It was dope.
Would bug out where enemies will stay in cover and do nothing. That happened from time to time as well. A number of times I encountered an issue.
And by the way, thank you everyone for hanging out and watching and chilling out. This is just a really super chill stream. We're just watching some reviews. We got a couple more after this. I can't remember what exactly is in the place. We got one from Rex. I think we got one from IGN. We got a couple of different ones. I think we got 4 or 5 anyways. But anyone that's joining that's new, thanks for watching. We're going to be streaming Cyberpunk tomorrow night. So if you are enjoying the review right now, don't worry, we're going to be streaming this on the channel. I'm going to be doing a full playthrough. If you're into that kind of thing, we're going to be making Cyberpunk videos on the channel, so make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to be part of our community. We're super chill here, and like I said, we're going to be celebrating Cyberpunk basically all month until we finish playing the game. We're going to play as much as possible, so yeah.
Where if an NPC is interacting with an object, sometimes a duplicate of that object will suspend itself in the air. There are plenty of cases where I found duplicate NPCs in an interior environment, especially. I'd find them a lot there, and it was very prominent and noticeable. They were standing right next to each other, not even apart at different ends of a room. They were next to each other, exact same copies of the same NPC model with the same hair color, same clothes, everything. V's character model also had some issues here and there, among them being that if I went to my apartment and looked at myself in the mirror, if I was wearing a hat, both the hat and my hair would disappear, and so I was staring at a bald version of myself instead of how I actually equipped my character. And then for the Street Kid new game that I started as a female V, and sometimes her upper body clothes will disappear and she'll just be fully naked when looking at a mirror. Or that sequence where Victor Vector pops the eyeball out to implant a new cyber eye, and you kind of get to see her character in third person for a brief moment there. In that scene, while my female V was on the operating table, for some reason her upper body was just fully naked. Audio glitches are also pretty abundant. Sometimes dialogue would straight up just not play, so there would be stretches of silence before the next dialogue plays, and I'd miss out on key important details for certain quests. Sometimes lips would not move as an NPC is talking, certain lines of dialogue where lips just remain sealed. Another audio issue was me getting phone calls in the middle of important dialogue that would lead to multiple dialogues happening at once. You'd hear V both talking on the phone and talking to the person next to him. Other times I would walk away from an NPC mid-conversation and they would continue conversing with me, and V would continue conversing with them despite having moved very far away from them. And then certain certain sound effects would straight up be missing. So sometimes footsteps would be entirely muted for
Apparently there is a day one patch though, so that is good news.
Extended period of time. There will be other times when the sound of glass breaking or shattering wouldn't play when I would break a window by shooting at it or by engaging with it via melee. Visual elements would not appear from time to time. So there's this one mission where I was in this AI controlled cab and there is a screen where the face of the AI would show up, but there will be times when the face would be absent completely. On a larger scale, one time I was walking in Pacifica and there was this giant Ferris wheel that would occasionally disappear if I approached it from a certain angle. A few times, subtitles would just sort of stay on the screen that had already been spoken and would not go away. The inventory menu bugged out here and there. There'd be times when I want to compare stats of weapons, and instead of comparing to the weapon that I'm currently wielding, sometimes it would compare to a weapon that I was wielding previously instead. There'd be times when clicking on elements of the inventory menu would not work. So if I wanted to attach a silencer and wanted to see what silencers I had, sometimes clicking on the silencer tab would not work. I would have to like click on something else and then click on the silencers tab.
Yeah, so obviously when they get early access to the game like this is a PC version, remember, Chad. Some ports are different than others. Like I said, there is going to be a day one patch tomorrow. It's going to be like 40 gigs. That's the size of a full game. So CD Projekt Red has been crunching. There has been articles about that. It's a bummer that they have to go through that. But I'm sure that they're going to fix a lot of this stuff. And I think Cyberpunk will probably be my personal game of the year. But of course, they have this timeline thing with the Game Awards and all of that. Who gets awarded. And by the way, the Game Awards is tomorrow night, so I want to stream that and watch everything that happens, but we're going to be streaming Cyberpunk, 7 p.m. It's happening, so.
For that to show up, stuff like that. And then I encountered issues where looking at my stash where I store my weapons and experience. I also did encounter performance issues. Before the mid-review patch, performance was just really bizarre. I have a 3080 on my PC with
this performance stuff. We're going to see his final thoughts. We'll go to the conclusion. Here we go.
Technical issues go, that's everything that I found, everything that I jotted down in my notes. And these bugs happen consistently enough, disruptively enough, where I would say it definitely affects the experience. But even with all that, I cannot help but feel as though this was one of the most memorable gaming experiences I've ever had. I was just constantly blown away when everything was running well, at the detail, at the story, at what was going on screen, at the world, just every facet of the game. I've never played a game quite like this. This is the Cyberpunk game. There have been other games in the Cyberpunk genre, and I think that once they get the bugs sorted out, Cyberpunk 2077 is gonna surpass all of them by a mile. It's just, it is that good when things are running well. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is part one of my review. I hope to be able to show you more of my gameplay in part two and highlight what I mean with some of these issues, but also really spotlight the incredible achievement that is this game at the end of it all. So look forward to that. In the meantime,
so super positive review other than some bugs that are going to be going on. I expect those to be ironed out. There will definitely be some bugs day one. That happens with a lot of different games. This game is, of course, very intricate. There's so many different things going on, so it's to be expected. However, we want the smoothest playing experience possible. So we're going to move on to the next review, everyone. We got a few more to go through. We're going to go with Rex Gaming. I don't know if you guys are subscribed to him. Yang, yeah, we're going to throw a like on this video. And we're going to throw a comment too. We'll throw some positive vibes. Great video. All right. So we're going to go to a second review, chat. And we'll go through the other ones. We got What Culture Gaming and we got IGN. We can pop in this if anybody else has some suggestions on the reviews that we're going to be, that you want me to watch and react to. We can watch those too. But we'll go to Rex next. Yeah, Yang Yas is... He's really...
If you guys want to be with a chop...
Yang Yas is really well-spoken. He knows his shit. He plays a ton of games. He's a good guy. Voted for Joe Biden. Those are all good
to win
things.
Both. Welcome back to another video for Cyberpunk 20. At the time of recording this video, I have currently sunk 20 hours into the game, so this is not a review. This is just my first impressions
a lot of really great comments for Game of the Year. I don't know. I think Ghost of Tsushima. is probably game of the year. I don't know. Just overall, like Last of Us 2 is amazing too. That's really up there, but like, I don't know. But I mean, they're both incredible games. This kind of is just outside of the timeline. This is in the batch for next year's game of the year. So I expect Cyberpunk will be in the running for that, but God of War Ragnarok is probably going to win if it drops next year.
I've played so far. I have not completed the game because, as I have found out myself, this is a pretty big game. But I do want to talk about how I'm kind of enjoying my experience so far, what I've done so far. There'll be no spoilers. I will not be touching on story in the slightest. I'll mention that, I like a couple of characters, but I'll give you no story spoilers. So this is a completely safe video. I kind of just want to give you an idea as to, what I've got up to, what I've enjoyed, and sort of how my experience is going so far, because quite honestly, I'm 20 hours in and I genuinely feel like I'm still only scratching the surface. So there's a lot still to experience. But either way, for those of you wondering, what lies ahead of you, then I want to talk about this because I think also it's important to sort of set expectations as to what you'll be diving into. So if you do enjoy this, a like would be super appreciated. If you have any questions, drop them down below and
let's like this video. All right, let's give it a go.
I will do my best to answer them, assuming that I can. But to begin with, let's start from the top. It's also worth noting the footage you're seeing in the background is not my gameplay. This is B-roll provided by CD Projekt Red. I will be uploading videos on the channel later on this week when the embargo lifts, but for the time being, this is just B-roll, so it's probably footage you've seen before, but it gives us something to talk over the top of. So, where do we begin? Well, first things first, I chose to play as a nomad because honestly, I feel like everybody's going to gravitate towards Corpo or Street Kid, and plus the nomads kind of feel like the Vikings of Cyberpunk, and they're sort of all about family and honor, and I respect that. And honestly, I'm really glad I chose that choice because it's given me sort of a very different look at Night City. Street Kids start inside the city, Corpos start at the top of the food chain. Meanwhile, the Nomads, you start on the outside of the city. Your first experience of this game is the desert, the Badlands, and you then, of course, work your way into the city. So it's been a pretty kind of interesting start, a kind of very distinct contrast, should I say. But yeah, that's how I sort of began the game. And as I've been playing through, it is definitely important to kind of stress that the prologue, so to speak, before you even get to the Cyberpunk title screen, depending on how much exploring you do, depending on how much you kind of just go towards the golden line, it's going to take you somewhere in the realms of 5 to 6 hours before you actually see that like Cyberpunk title screen come up. What'll basically happen is you do your prologue, you then get a little sort of montage to get you caught up to speed, you skip forward in time, and you then are into the meat of the game. Well, actually, no, you're not even into the meat of the game, should I say. You're into the beginning of the game, but it's still going to be quite some time until you get to the meat of it, which I kind of sort of want to touch on now because it's very important to stress. If you've, depending on the angle you're coming from, and I think a lot of you kind of probably expect this, but this is an RPG. Like, it is an RPG first, an RPG second, an RPG third, and then a shooter. Right? So I think depending on, what angle you're coming from, if you've seen a lot of the trailers, I know for marketing purposes, they like to kind of like play out the action and whatnot, show a lot of sort of like gunplay, some shooting, but this is an RPG. Like, you're going to spend a lot of time going around, talking to people, building relationships, getting to know characters, experiencing the story, which is fantastic. Like, if you're playing this for the story, which you should be, then you're going to have a brilliant time. But it's important to note that if, say, I don't know, maybe you've watched some trailers and you're like, yo, everything I see in the trailers is just V jumping out of cars, shooting people, gunplay, explosions. This is not a shooter, right? This is an RPG with shooter elements. So just kind of get that into your head before you dive into it to kind of temper your expectations, because honestly, within the first 6, maybe even 10 hours, I feel like I can count on one hand the amount of gun engagements I had. Most of the time I was spent kind of going around, doing missions, meeting people, speaking to people, and this is a good thing. Like, to be clear, it's not like this isn't fetch quest. I'm not going somewhere to go and grab a basket of bread and go and take it to someone. Like, I'm going there to have meaningful conversations with characters. So the development is really, really exciting, and it's kind of setting up for a lot of things. But again, I think it's important to explain that, you will spend a good chunk of the beginning of the game just setting a lot of stuff up.
That's really encouraging to have a really nice introduction into what the world is going to be like, to what the mechanics, the gameplay, to get really used to it. That's really unique. I'm really interested to see what the prologue is like.
That being said, once you do kind of get through the prologue, you are given complete free reign. You can go where you want, do what you want, and this is where I kind of got hit by choice paralysis, because there is a lot of stuff. Like, there is a lot of stuff to do in this game. It's almost kind of like real life in that respect, because you're going on a mission and someone will ping off your phone and be like, yo, V, I've got a job for you. And I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm in the middle of a job. Just come back to me later. and then 2 minutes later someone else phones me or texts me and is like, yo, you want to buy this car? I'm like, I'm on the job, just give me a second, right? And then someone else will call you, and then before you know it, you finish the mission, your side quest log is a bajillion quests long, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you look at your phone, you've missed text messages, you've missed voicemail messages, you've missed calls from people, and you're like, all right, I've got cars to buy, I've got texts to reply to, I've got side quests to do, I've got perks to spend. There's a lot of stuff, like so much so that it was quite daunting at the beginning. This is not a bad thing by any means, to be clear. This is awesome because there's so much choice, but I almost feel like my entire first Cyberpunk playthrough is kind of going to be like a tutorial because there's just so many systems that I'm learning, things that I'm kind of experiencing. I feel like once I've completed the game the first time, my second playthrough might almost be like my real playthrough. And I'm not someone that typically does multiple playthroughs, but I already find myself wanting to play through again because I'm like, how would this play out if I was a corpo? How would this play out if I was a street kid?
So fucking dope.
Going back to the kind of choice side of things, there's a lot of things to take in. You know, when you're leveling your character up, you obviously have the stat screen, you have your 5 primary attributes, and then within those, you of course have all of your different perks. Each of the perk pages...
Just look at how cool the UI looks, everyone. Oh man, I am so stoked. I love the customization that we're being shown so far in Cyberpunk. Like, menus. I love menus, man. We got like... I just love it. Just like the look of it, the color scheme, it all looks so fucking cool.
Depending on the attribute, is between 2 and 3 pages. There's a lot of points to spend, and suddenly you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, how do I want to spec my character? Do I want to go into blades? Do I want to go into shotguns, assault rifles? Do I want to go into blunt damage? Do I want to go into all these different things? Oh wait, I'm specing my character, but then there's also a skill tree for crafting, but there's also a skill tree for like stealth. Like suddenly you've got all these different trees and I'm like, where do I spend my points? I don't want to make a mistake. So there's a lot of choice. To be clear, I have spent my character as a gym bro. I have literally spent most of the game with blunt damage. I run up to enemies and I punch them in the face. I can't wait to show you guys some gameplay because honestly, my build is pretty nuts. I've got gorilla fists and I literally run up and I can 2-tap most enemies. I just punch them in the face, they're down, they're gone. I run towards bullets. 99% of the time, it actually works. Couple of times I get gunned down, I'm still fine-tuning my build. But the point is, there's a lot of different ways to play your character. With that being said, I haven't yet encountered any kind of weapons or gear items that I feel have exceptionally stood out to me, but this kind of goes back to where I am in the game. I'm 20 hours in, and honestly, narratively speaking, I still feel like things are only just starting to get going. That doesn't mean to say it's slow, but because along the way you meet a lot of different characters, there's a lot of different options. You can kind of take the story in different routes, none of which really feel like they are the wrong path. But if you do that, it expands out a lot more. So in the process of getting to know a lot of characters, building out and fleshing out the story, I still feel like I'm almost kind of at the beginning of a chapter where things are about to start heating up, things are about to start kind of going. It could be at that point where, you know, the story suddenly accelerates quite quickly and then gets to the end. Honestly, I don't know how near I am to the end. Being 20 hours in, I feel like I've probably still got a good 30, 40 hours ahead of me because I'm kind of trying to golden line it. I'm not trying to skip anything, but at the same time, I'm not doing all the side quests because I'm just trying to sort of get through the story for the time being. I'll go back and do some stuff afterwards. But even so, factoring in all the things I've experienced so far, I do still feel like I'm setting up for like a big kind of monumental story piece. And on that note, it's kind of one of those things where because the game is a bit of a slow burner, I'm really enjoying what I've played so far. It's been a really good experience, but at the same time, I haven't encountered too many mind-blowing moments yet, and I feel like that's because the game is potentially going to sort of save until later. I've experienced games like this before where it spends a lot of time setting up story and then suddenly it delivers this huge bang at the end and you're like, what the hell, no way. I feel like this is the kind of game that is setting up for that. So as a result, a lot of my experiences so far I've really enjoyed. Like I've loved getting to know the characters, I've loved kind of exploring the world, driving through Night City in the rain especially.
Are we going to get our own Lambo?
At night is fantastic. I'm playing it on PC, so I've got an RTX 3080, so I've got that RTX and DLSS turned on. The game looks fantastic. So, you know, it's awesome driving through that world, but I still feel like I haven't yet had too many of those moments where I'm like, yo,
oh my God, Chad, I don't know. We might be a motorbike crew. We might rock the motorbikes.
This thing that happened, this is awesome, where I'll be kind of talking to people about that. So I feel like maybe that's coming a little bit later on, which again goes back to the reason why I think I'm still only just scratching the surface. Now, to jump back a moment just to speak about combat, combat is one of those things that, much like the story, is also a bit of a kind of slow burner because you get proficiency through the things that you do, and of course the skills and the perks that you spec into. So early on, combat in itself is pretty basic. Even your guns, like you haven't got all the handling proficiency, so you won't necessarily handle them at the beginning as well as you would at the end. But it's also more important to note that like a lot of the things that you'll do that will kind of flesh out your build, like the skills that you'll unlock in the perk tree, or even the cyberware that you'll get from the Ripper docs, those you don't get till much later on. Some of the cyberware you need to...
What kind of build should we do, Chad? I feel like I wanna really enhance the gunplay as opposed to doing like a melee build, or I don't know. I feel like we could do a stealth build, but I want to use all the
level
guns
of
and all
street
the
cred,
loot.
which you just get naturally by playing the game. So some of those things, you know, Gorilla Fists, Mantis Blades, the Cyber Wire, the ability to double jump or charge jump, all those kind of cyberware implants, you don't get them till, I mean, I've only just bought the Gorilla Arms at the kind of 20-hour mark. Maybe I could have done it a little bit earlier, but generally speaking, it's taken me quite a while to get there. So I feel like even on the combat front, early on, it's not going to feel like super satisfying because you haven't really invested in your character. You still have yet to get a lot of the good gear. Even on the crafting front, you know, you might have been speccing more into crafting, but you still got to go and find those rarer crafting materials. So a lot of that stuff is definitely sort of mid to late game in that respect. So as you can kind of feel like super satisfying because you haven't really invested.
Oh my God, look at the customization, Chad. Oh, it looks so fucking phenomenal, man.
In your character, you still have yet to get a lot of the good gear. Even on the crafting front, you know, you might have been speccing more into crafting, but you still got to go and find those rarer crafting materials. So a lot of that stuff is definitely sort of mid to late game in that respect. So as you can kind of sort of see, hopefully I'm sort of painting this picture for you that the sort of first, I don't know, half of the game is just a load of setup. Getting your character to where you want to be, getting the story to where you want it to be, building the relationships with the characters that you care about. All of that stuff is what the first kind of half of the game is about. But again, it doesn't feel slow. None of it has felt like I have been dragging my heels. There's no point where I've been playing through and I'm like, oh man, this is really boring, or this is really long. Like everything just, there's always something to do. I think that's the thing I like about it, is like at any moment I can bring up my phone and then someone's messaged me with like a task or a job or a side quest. And that's the important thing as well. Side quests are really cool in this. The way that they're kind of broken down into side activities, you have gigs, which are just like one-off things, like go here, kill someone, go here, do something. But you then have side jobs, which are like side quests, and they are fully fleshed out. Like, some of these are branching, some of them have like multiple stages to them. I just finished one. I'm not going to say what I did because the ending of it was pretty cool, but it revolves around a character who I really like in game. She's really cool, and I think it was sort of like 4, 5, 6 quests long, where, you know, you would do the first bit, you come to an end, and then like that quest chain would die down. You go off and do something else, and then like later on she'd call you and be like, yo, can you come and help me? And then you go and carry on again, and then it all sort of builds up to like a very, very big climax, like a big ending, which was really, really awesome. So even the side quests, like the side quests are 100% part of the story themselves. I feel like, you know, you might not have to do all the gigs, or you might not have to go and buy all the cars, but I highly recommend at least doing all the things that are called side jobs, because they all have their own really, really interesting stories and characters themselves. You know, you might not be interested in all the characters. It doesn't mean to say you have to do every single one, but if there's a character you like and they have some side jobs, definitely follow that through, because you will have, you just learn so much more about them. So there's a lot of stuff to do in the game. That's the main thing. From my initial impressions, from my first 20 hours, the best way I can set it up is that the game starts slow. It'll take a little while before you get the character to where you want to be, but along that way, you meet a load of people, you build the story, and honestly, I can't wait to see where the game goes from there. I'm very, very excited to sort of see how some of these story beats play out. I'm heavily expecting there to be some huge like plot twist or huge moment that makes my jaw drop and makes me go like, what the hell, no way, like I'm looking forward to that kind of thing, but I haven't experienced it so far. So that's what I have. That's all I can kind of really share so far based on my experience. I'm having a great time, and I look forward to completing the game and maybe talking about it more once I've done so. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope it's kind of sort of given you a little bit of insight into my early play session.
We'll move on to the next review, everyone. We'll go to What Culture Gaming.
Getting a website for free and getting the guidance is
It's going to pop through this ad real quick.
If you do have...
Hello all of you little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and after 8 years it is finally here, Cyberpunk 2077, and the question on every single person's salivating lips is this game any good? Well, I've been playing this game religiously since I was handed the review copy, and I have but one word to say: yes! God, yes. This game is amazing. I'm about to go off on a massive rant of about 10 minutes or so of me just praising this game. I love it. I've lost myself to it completely, and here is why. There is no doubt about it, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the most immersive, impressive, and downright dense games that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. And while it is not perfect, those dings on the surface did little to dampen my day. Now, before I start really getting into the meat and bones of this, I need to stress a few things. I played this game from a corpo perspective. Just look at me,
cool.
How could I not? And that meant that my sort of gameplay is tailored towards a very specific path. They do converge in the main narratives, but when you start, depending on what choices you make at the very beginning of the game, they can...
So far, I think we've had Street Kid. Did we have the first one was Yong Street Kid? I can't remember, but Rex was Nomad, right? So he's Corpo. That's
wildly
dope.
diverged. So there might be things that I cover here that other people might not have played or be covering, so that's good, but I will definitely stay away from the main narrative spoilers for you and only talk about the gameplay. That being said, as many people have already said before, there is a 5 to 6 hour prologue for this game. That is a very lengthy one, so I will be detailing mechanics that you learned through this prologue because that's pretty much similar across the board, but I will stay away from any major spoilers, okay? And also, as a final thing, in order to get around some weird embargoes that are going on at the moment, we're only allowed to show footage of pre-existing trailers and stuff that I've been provided by the developers.
CD Projekt is trying to get all the
Let's
bugs
crack
out
on.
of the...
So where
out of
to
all the
begin?
games.
It is a question that I've asked myself over and over because I have lost myself to Night City both figuratively and literally. This place is huge and the sheer amount of content present in nearly every district is overspilling with distractions, to the point that the prologue section that I just mentioned might actually take you a whole lot longer as you scurry between side quests looking for new loot and clothing to deck out your character. And in fact, that's probably where we should start, with the character creation, because my God, it is brilliant. It allows you to alter nearly every facet of your chosen neon-soaked ne'er-do-well, from cheek structure to facial scars, all the way down to which cosmetic optical upgrades that you'd like to apply. It's easy to forget that this game is told from a first-person perspective, but one need only find a reflective surface or even just look down to see what gaudy garments that you've decked yourself out in. Now, while I would have liked the option to play the game in a third-person perspective, I really didn't give it a second thought once I was really into the game. It's just that immersive. The visuals are stunning as well, with the entire world feeling decidedly lived in and run down in areas and actually quite grotty, but also retaining so much gaudy flash that Barry Allen wanted to have a word. The lightning and reflective surfaces are especially enthralling as you can see sunrise flitter across ocean waves and lasers refract off all glasses and clothing when you're cutting a rug in one of the many, many clubs. In short, it is an utterly breathtaking visual spectacle to behold, as is the gameplay, which actually divides itself into 4 very distinct areas. You've got shooting, you've got stealth and hacking, you've got melee, and of course, you've got that weighty dialogue choices. The way that Cyberpunk balances all of these is impeccable, with a decent tutorial for each, which lets you get to grips with things. Shooting feels weighty, and by that I mean that the guns have a kickback that would rival a foul-tempered mule, and each slug or laser that you fire hits with such impact that you can send enemies toppling over themselves. Now that being said, the shooting isn't perfect. I mean, there are enemies that can just tank so much damage that you could unload an entire SMG clip into them and they'll still be running through ready to smack you one, but luckily the devs have provided a quick assault button that you've got with your guns equipped. You can just bash and bounce and turn the tables. That's okay. And once you start leveling up your your body stats and things like that, you'll be able to adjust how the guns feel, and you get less kickback and better guns have more accuracy. And it definitely feels like you miss less and less as you go on. But at the start of the game, you're really quite struggling when you're overwhelmed with enemies. You're like, oh God, okay, reload, okay, I've been hit. Ouch. However, it might well be you who's doing the rushing, as there's a substantial focus on melee fighting in this game, from full-on katanas to Bioshock-esque wrenches. Using these, you can stab and bludgeon your foes to death before they've even unhooked their pistols. Now, things start off pretty basic with strong attacks and dodges, but you're quickly shown how to counter incoming attacks, which will make you feel like a true martial arts master. And then you can unlock further skills that allow you to leap from the shadows with insta-kills or from rooftops, allowing you to skewer foes with extreme force as you land. Now, it can be hard at first to balance a ton of enemies, especially when they prefer to use guns and you're just running up to them with like a rusty spoon. But once you've invested a load of points into your body skill, for example, who knows what crazy skills you might unlock.
Hell yes.
You definitely better watch What Culture, because we're doing a load of videos on such a thing. But that's beside the point right now. But combat might not be for you though, hence why the game also provides a huge focus on stealth and hacking. With a simple press of a button, you can slow time to a near crawl as you examine your surroundings.
So like
Here you can mark gang members or potential
Deus Ex
threats which stay visible on your minimap, or hack nearby cameras and turrets to plan out your route. But best of all, this hacking mode allows you to distract enemies by using, say, like vending machines that cough out tons and tons of soda cans, or better still, you can hijack the very cyberware that your enemies have. You can short circuit their insides, or even worse, in a quite brutal fashion, you can disable their eyes. You can make people blind with hacking. That should be the tagline of this game. In these moments, you feel like you're playing a spiritual successor to Deus Ex, but with an even better range of gadgets, all of which can be swapped out on the fly, and a huge...
Chat, are we going to make a bunch of people blind in Cyberpunk? That seems like a super cruel thing to do. But it seems like there's so many options, like different ways to play the game, right? Oh, I'm so stoked. The customizability list just looks unreal.
Beautiful world to explore. Now, I easily had the most fun with these hacking and stealth games because it allowed me to set up these perfect runs where I'd get through, take out all the guards, to destroy all of the electronic defenses that they had, and finally reach the layer's boss, and then just go like, "How's it going, mate?" And they'd be like, "Help, help, help," and no one would be there. Delicious.
Hey, you! Me? Yeah, you! Don't you...
What I'm trying to get at is that every single playstyle is catered for, and the game rewards patient planning as much as it does balls to the wall brawling. There's enough granular customization at play that no two characters will feel the same, and that is truly impressive.
I can't wait.
In fact, it's just genuinely hard not to be impressed with what Cyberpunk has to offer, especially its dialogue and choice systems, both of which feel weighty and meaningful. I know that gets bandied around a lot, but here, it genuinely had a huge impact on the way that I play games. Now, the way that it deals out, like, side missions, they are, like, prescribed events. You go there, you take out a boss, or you find a bit of data, you do that. Like, that is a fixed thing. How you do that is up to you. But when it comes to the main missions, you're given tons of choices to affect how it plays out. For example, say that a deal isn't going your way. Why not pull a gun out mid-conversation to make your intentions known? Or, if you feel like you're about to be betrayed by somebody, why not take that, go and hack their system so that when they do their whole turncoat reveal, it goes off like a damp squib. I left so many mainline missions asking myself, wait, was that meant to happen? How did I even get to this point? And loved every single minute of it, to the point that I went back and replayed older saves just to see if I could change things, and yes, I could, and it was great. That being said, though, you better be brushed up on your sci-fi terminology or have read the Neuromancer series of books, because otherwise, this is something else. They do not, in any form whatsoever, usher you in gently. It is bam, terminology after terminology, and you're like, what's a bioplob? Like, what's a flimble? My flims! Yet every line of dialogue is delivered so convincingly by the voice cast that it is utterly astounding how natural they make it all sound. Luckily, there is a ton of glossaries and little pickups that you can get explaining what the main terminology is, so if you're there for a bit of reading, you will understand in short order. Now, I could literally just tell you about my day-to-day within this game and use that as a reason to get this title. And in fact, you know what, I will, because there is no better way of expressing how good this game is than showing you the moment-to-moment action. For a start, the range of activities available to you is almost offensively high. Not an hour into my journey, the map was looking like a seething, angry mass of side quests, ongoing crimes, venues to relax in, shops to explore, and even clues for hidden treasures that were stashed around the area. And the variance of these side missions in question again opened up a new Pandora's box of opportunities. from helping a man whose robo
Get hype, Corny, and everyone in chat. Yeah, I love seeing the hype in chat.
penis
I
was
love it.
malfunctioning, to going and finding out who murdered someone's son via trying to access a holotape, all the way to like busting up crimes that were going on with the police.
Thanks for that donation, Corny. I really, really appreciate it. Anybody that wants to support the channel, you can hit that join button or find my Patreon in the description of the video. Or, of course, you can donate in the live chat. Everything really helps. You don't have to do that. You can just like the video, comment, subscribe. All of that really helps out. But thank you very much, Corny.
Police department. And then there was like a fighting tournament as well. I'm a bare-knuckle boxing champion in this game. My head's spinning from the amount of things you can do. Even the go here, kill that missions offered something different, and that was in the shifting environment of Night City itself. The twisting high-rises and tight corridors of this city make for excellent escape routes, reconnaissance areas, or just a place to dump a body, and it was a joy to explore. And the sheer amount of NPCs that are on camera at any one time should have been tanking my system. And that's why I'm so surprised that this game is genuinely optimized so well. My system was purring along, yet I was looking at it just like, this should melt this thing. But don't get me wrong, there are some bugs. Of course there are. It's a massive game of this scope and scale. Of course there are going to be a few things that slip through the net. And I have to say that while I did encounter a fair few, none of which were gameplay breaking. Now, it would be inexcusable for me to say, hey, look, I should give this game a free pass because of the fact that, you know, these bugs don't matter and affect the gameplay in that sense. But things like having the guns sort of float above dead bodies, having things like characters talking over themselves with dual lines of dialogue that were competing with each other, or them just sort of rotating around on the spot or driving through a lamppost that knocked it over. Those things sound bad, but at no point did they actually affect the moment-to-moment gameplay that I was having. It was just aesthetical problems. And while I'm not giving it a pass, and I definitely think that after 8 years in the tube and all this extra time with development, these things should have been polished out, I am saying that since I've had the review code, I've seen multiple updates come in that have fixed huge swathes of problems straight away. So it is without a shadow of doubt in my mind that CD Projekt Red are going to fix these things in very, very quick time. What I would fix, however, are the driving controls. By gummy gum bear, these things are pretty clunky. Now, it's fine, it's functional, it will get you from A to B, and there are a ton of vehicles for you to choose from, and all of which are super, super stylish and well designed. But the problem is they never really feel like they're going as fast as you think that they are, and some of the turning circles here make the Titanic look pretty nippy. But that being said, I still enjoyed going around Night City just in the car, not because of how I was driving, but mainly because of that thumping soundtrack and the atmosphere that was just dripping through the vents.
Yeah.
I turned it on, the AC was just
Blasting
like,
music in a car.
vibes everywhere. My lord, this soundtrack is an absolute stomper of a mix. Every single track is an infectious earworm.
And a very cool thing that CD Projekt Red did for streamers, chat, is they have like a non-copyrighted strike basically version. I'm gonna have to turn that on because we're gonna be streaming Cyberpunk starting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But that's super cool that they've taken the ones that will get you copyrighted, and they have a completely different version for streamers. So streamer optimized version of the soundtrack. Very fucking cool.
That provides heavy-hitting bass lines and aggressive techno stylings that suit this game down to the ground. I would be sitting there in my car banging my head along a few feet away from the actual objective that I needed to get to just because I didn't want to get out until the track had finished. That is how good this soundtrack is. Now, this is the thing, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what this game has to offer. I've detailed, if anything, just the core experience. There is so much to love about this game, and while I can't talk about the narrative in this review, don't worry, we'll be coming back with tons of videos about that later on, I can say that it is meaty, it is meaningful, it is dense beyond belief, and it is thoroughly engaging. There is so much to explore about this map that I do not think that you could even use the term Game of the Year, because it's going to take you at least 2 to see everything this has. I'm blown away. I really am. All this extra time that was taken to make this has turned this from a letter of love into an absolute Bible. It's honestly breathtaking. I'm glad it exists. It has provided me with so much joy, even over this short...
That is incredible, chat. To hear people say that is really, really good news.
Period, that I have honestly never felt anything quite like it. It is, therefore, with great pleasure that I give this a 5 out of 5. And that is including the bugs and driving that I've mentioned before that I wasn't too keen on. It's because this experience, for me, personally, is perfect. I've lost myself to this game. I can't wait to go back on. It's on pause right now while I do this. That hasn't happened for a long time. And I don't give perfect game review scores. Just out of principle. But this one, you broke me bad. Nice one. And there we go, my friends. Those were my views on Cyberpunk 2077.
Give it a like. Great review. We'll put love the vibes, since he spoke about vibes. Appreciate that, Mr. What Culture. We'll go into the IGN review.
Welcome to Night City. The future's yours for the taking.
We have to watch this ad.
Cyberpunk
It's not
2077.
But it's cool. We get to see Keanu.
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Before we dive in, let me make a quick apology. CD Projekt Red wouldn't allow us to use our own recorded gameplay for this review. So unlike a typical IGN review, what you're going to see while I talk about Cyberpunk 2077 isn't entirely representative of what I experienced when I played. But that restriction is only temporary, so when it comes out, we'll publish a new version of this review with our own footage to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Also, keep in mind that we haven't gotten to touch the PlayStation or Xbox versions yet, so what I'm talking about here is specifically the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077, which I played on a GeForce RTX 3080 GPU. And now, on to the review. The quality of an open-world RPG often isn't defined by the strength of its main story, but the side missions around it. With Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red has built an entire game around that philosophy. Apart from its surprisingly short but utterly compelling central questline, the vast majority of what you can do in Night City is entirely optional, but still extremely impactful. This more free-form structure isn't without its faults, including loads of distracting bugs, but the strength of the missions themselves and the broad and interesting choices you have within them makes Cyberpunk 2077 one of the most exciting RPGs I've played in recent years.
By the way, we will be what we'll do, chat too, is we'll do a review here on the channel, like maybe after like 20 hours or 25 hours, we'll do like a, hey, this is what we think so far, and then once we finish the game, we'll do a full review.
You play as V, a mercenary in Night City who ends up with the psyche of long-dead rock star and anti-corporate terrorist Johnny Silverhand trapped in their head. Yes, that's Keanu Reeves, though his performance is actually a bit stiff relative to the rest of the excellent cast.
Do whatever it takes to stop him, defeat him, gut him. If I gotta kill, I'll kill.
But Johnny's confrontational relationship with V is wonderfully tense, acting as the anchor of the whole story. Cyberpunk 2077's opening hours do an incredible job of getting you invested in their struggle, and then Night City's sprawling map opens wide. If most game structures look like a redwood tree with a tall trunk that has paths branching off as you go higher, Cyberpunk 2077 is more like a large bush. You don't have to go far to have dozens of tangled branches within reach. Night City is so dense, diverse, and consistently beautiful that there are opportunities to stumble upon unexpected sights and missions all the time. The scope is simply stunning, from the massive skyscrapers to the immaculately detailed in-world advertisements that are plastered all over them. Cyberpunk 2077 feels like an RPG through and through. It's full of rich, beautifully presented conversations and an almost mind-boggling amount of choice in dialogue, character builds, mission approach, and beyond. What's more, those choices can have a massive impact on both V's own story and the characters around them. I once made a suggestion to a character that later lost him his job. That decision altered every future interaction, and knowing that someone else might have a very different relationship with him made my playthrough feel more personal. Similarly, I was shocked to discover one of my favorite missions early on wasn't even offered to another player because of a single decision we made differently. Realizations like this quickly became a common occurrence. The missions themselves are also largely delightful. My favorites range from infiltrating an extravagant parade to a series of detective missions where you actually need to collect evidence on your own, to a deeply touching scuba diving mission, all the way to befriending a sentient vending machine. The fact that Cyberpunk 2077 is able to have deep, affecting moments alongside lighthearted goofs and blaring sex ads without any of it feeling out of place is a testament to the strength of both its stories and the world they take place in. And remember, just because something is a side mission doesn't mean it's not important to the main story. Surprisingly, Cyberpunk 2077 only took me around 20 hours to beat the first time, but it was only after reloading a save and spending another 20 hours completing side missions and befriending characters that I went back to finish the story again and found my ending options had drastically changed. After 45 hours, I've now found 6 wildly different endings and still have plenty more I want to do. While this freeform structure is impressive, it did create a false sense that I was failing to make progress at times. 3 percentages relating to different aspects of V's journey are presented like progress trackers in the menu, but they don't actually function that way, making them frustratingly misleading. Regardless, the openness of Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty remarkable. Beyond the big story decisions, you also get the good old-fashioned choice of how to kill or politely incapacitate your enemies. There are no character classes here. Instead, you invest points into 5 primary attributes, and then into perks within each of those. For example, if you're planning to go stealthy, the cool attribute can make enemies slower to detect you, and its stealth perk page is full of additional boons like increased crouched movement speed or unlocking an aerial takedown. Perks will also naturally improve as you use them, making the system...
Chat, what do we say? Do we want to, is there another YouTuber or another review that y'all would like me to check out? We can do a couple more after this. GameSpot? We can check that out. This one's pretty much over, right? So, put a couple in chat and we'll go check
wonderfully
some other ones out after this.
Combat opens up gradually as well. While I didn't love the gunplay initially, I eventually found unique weaponry and clever cybernetic augmentations that elevated it above simple pointing and shooting. Some guns can charge up and shoot through walls, while others fire bullets that seek out enemies. And cool, iconic weapons add unique twists with flashy looks. Add in cyberware that lets you slow time, double jump, and more, and it's just a matter of time before you find some custom combination that clicks. It never becomes the most complex dance, especially with stuff like the fairly mashy melee options, but it's one that I felt I had complete control over choreographing. Of course, my V's policy was always to try sneaking before going loud. Similar to combat, stealth isn't much deeper than crouch walking out of sight, but planning my route and using quick hacks to do things like blind guards can be an engaging and fun puzzle. Like in a Deus Ex game, I was able to complete some missions without ever drawing a weapon, which is rewarding in a different way than cutting off someone's head with mantis blades. When things do get loud though, a special commendation needs to be given to Cyberpunk 2077's music. The soundtrack is fantastic throughout, but the combat music stands out, driving the pace of fights directly.
All right, I've heard a shit ton about. Does it live up to the hype? Let's. This is like a 40-minute. That's a pretty long one. We can go with the shorter one. It was IGN. GameSpot has a long one. This could be the. Maybe we'll just watch this one.
It's the Drive It Home holiday event at your Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram dealer. Get 25% off MSRP on Ram 1500. That's up to $14,600 in total discounts. The Drive It Home holiday event. On now.
Hey folks, I'm Lucy, and joining me is our Cyberpunk 2077 reviewer Callie Plaguey.
Hello.
And Jake Decker, who has also been playing a bunch of Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, almost 45 hours now?
That's a lot. But before we get into what the two of them thought of the game, just a quick note up front about why this isn't our traditional review format featuring bespoke video footage that we've captured ourselves. That is because there are two different embargoes for Cyberpunk, and today's is the written embargo. That means that Callie can post her written review featuring images that she has captured in-game, but not with video that we have captured ourselves. That is under a separate embargo. So that means like this video, subscribe to GameSpot to make sure you can watch the video review when it's ready, or head over to GameSpot.com now if you want to read.
Yeah, so the reason she's saying that is I think they're fixing all the bugs for the console version, which is why they were giving up the PC version. PC version, obviously, you can run it on ultra settings and stuff like that. When you have PC versions, you usually have stronger operating systems. So going to be really interesting to see what they say.
Read Callie's full review. So just wanted to get that note. We have our official video review coming with our own footage as soon as we are able to. So housekeeping is out of the way. Let's get into it. The two of you, how much have you played and which life path did you both pick? Callie, I'll come to you first.
I've played 50 hours so far. I am at the very end, but I keep hitting a freezing bug, which we'll get to. So I haven't finished it, but I've almost finished it. And I've done a bunch of side stuff. I picked the nomad life path because I thought it would make more sense on if this is the first time I'm playing the game. I don't know the city. That's like the background of a nomad, so I decided to go with
you are an outsider yourself, just as V is in the game. So that makes total sense to me.
Oh, there better not be a shitload of ads.
Introducing the Google Room-to-Room Music Machine. Nest Audio from Google.
Yeah, I need to sign up for YouTube Red or whatever it is.
Right, that was the idea.
And Jake, what about you?
Yeah, so I picked Nomad for my first playthrough. I think it took me about 40 hours or so, and today I just started one as a Corpo. So I've seen those two life paths as of now, but I have finished the game. I have seen multiple endings at this point just by save scumming, essentially.
Right, and so I guess that means there is a specific moment in the game where it's like, this is the point of no return.
Yeah, I think that's worth pointing out, is that you will get to a point where it will say, hey, finish up all the side quests you want to do because you're about to get to the final section of the game.
Gotcha. Which is kind of reassuring because from the sounds of it, it does have a bunch of endings. And I mean, a quick question before we get into like the deeper kind of nitty gritty of it is like, are these endings, do they vary much?
I don't want to say a whole lot on this, but it seems like, yes, they do seem to vary a lot. Woo! And it seems like your choices on endings will depend on which characters you help out through the game, kind of similar to The Witcher in some sense. But if I remember correctly, The Witcher had about 3 major endings, and this seems to have significantly more than that. But right now it's really hard to say because, like I said, I've only done one playthrough. So
yes,
we'll see.
All right. Well, you mentioned characters there, so that seems a good a segue as any to talk about the characters that we'll encounter in Night City. But we'll start by talking about the one who has been in our hearts, I guess, and at the forefront of most of the marketing is going to be Keanu Reeves playing Johnny Silverhand. Now, Callie, when you were playing, what did you think of Keanu's portrayal? How is he as a character and interacting with you as V? It's, from my point of view, I just hope that it's not just another celebrity in a game. You know, he's like really taking on this role and giving it his all.
Oh, I would say it's definitely more than just another celebrity in a game. Like the thing about Johnny Silverhand is that he's a huge asshole. He's such a douche. And that's part of his character. And it makes sense. And it's, it's a testament to Keanu's performance that I actually liked Johnny Silverhand despite all the shit he says. Because, and I should say, this is going to be probably an M-rated review because there's a lot of swearing in the game and a lot of heavy topics. So I'm just going to go for it. But yeah, he makes Johnny Silverhand like a nuanced, likable character. I mean, I think the writing does that as well, but I think I don't know that I would have liked him as much if he had been played by somebody else. I thought he was really well done. I thought like his delivery of the dialogue was really
phenomenal
strong. And yeah, he's a fascinating character. Johnny Silverhand is
complex.
he's a lot. He's just a lot. And yeah, there's a quest that like really opens up who he is and opens up like more sides to him that I really, really liked, and it helped deepen my appreciation for the character a lot.
Who in chat? Let's do a poll. Jabba says this game looks bad. Who in chat thinks this game looks amazing? And who in chat thinks this game looks bad? Let's do a poll.
I texted Jake this after seeing one sequence that involved a lot of drinking, and I was like, I am shocked Johnny Silverhand didn't die choking on his own vomit, because
wow,
like that's the vibe. Like if there's one thing I could say about him to like get across what kind of person he is, that's probably what I would say. Like for the basic stuff.
That I was gonna say that really explains him in a very, very specific way that I can imagine what kind of character he is. Jake, what about how you as a character interact with Johnny Silverhand? Because it's not just like, well, he's in your head.
Yeah, this was actually probably one of my favorite aspects of the game, is just how involved he is in all these quests. Like I think Callie brought up a really good point about how Keanu Reeves really sells this character. Like, the writing is good, but I do not think I would like Johnny Silverhand nearly as much if it didn't have the charm of Keanu Reeves. And I think that's very intentional. I imagine CD Projekt Red knew that. Like, they needed someone with a lot of charm. Otherwise, he might be a very hard character to like. But he appears in almost all of the side quests, the main quests you do in some form or another. Sometimes he'll just be there to make fun of you because you'll make a dumb decision. Sometimes he'll be there to egg you on, to push things further than you probably should. While other times he'll just be like, hey V, you should get the f*** out of here. You don't want anything to do with this. And you just kind of have the option to ignore him. And I think for me, that's one of the strongest aspects of his character and the story, is how he is very much his own character, and he doesn't necessarily like V right off the bat. So there's like this sort of antagonistic feeling you get through, I'd say probably a majority of the game, which I think works.
Lots of ads.
Deadline tomorrow, and your computer just
so
crashed.
Chat, there's a
It's
couple, there's
time.
only 2 people that said it looks
that
bad
protects
so
you from
far,
security threats online.
Which is awesome
for the most part. And just having that as Keanu Reeves too kind of helps you not hate him, because I think if it wasn't Keanu Reeves, you might very well hate him as much as V does at times. But like, I don't know, you'll be in a conversation with someone he won't be interested in, and he'll just hop on the bed and like kick his feet up and just make fun of everything they say, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, just to Jake's point, like I think I really want to reiterate, like, there's a lot about Johnny that is not likable. Like, he just doesn't treat women very well, or like historically when he was alive, I guess. But his presence in every scene is so strong, and it really gives stuff that maybe wouldn't be as interesting a lot more flavor. And yeah, I think one of my favorite things is when he gets really invested in something you're doing and is like, no, you should really go see what's over there. You should go see what's going on.
So Johnny's a troll.
Yeah, he provides a lot of color to everything you do, and I would say he's also one of my favorite parts of the game. And
Keanu
I
Reeves
agree
is
really
epic.
strongly with Jake too here.
Yeah, there's some moments where he gets so invested in whatever side quest you're doing that he'll just be like, V, this is the most entertainment I've had for a long time. You have to follow through. And it'll just be like some dumb quest that doesn't make any sense, but you're like, all right, I'm going to keep going just for Keanu here.
That's fair. But it's obviously, there are way more characters in Night City than just Keanu's portrayal of Johnny. Like, Callie, were there any other standouts? Like, how did you feel that the characters added to the storyline? Were there ones that were like just specific standouts and the rest were kind of meh, or was it a good mix of writing across all these different characters?
Yeah, I would say there were some standouts. Like, I think there's 2 characters in particular that I really, really loved. The first one is Judy. I won't go into her too much, but her quest is like, I think my favorite one that I did. It's like there's like characters that have longer form quests that you go on throughout the story, and you kind of have to like wait for them to call you and have a problem.
Judy.
And she's one of those
for sure.
And I thought it was really rich. I really enjoyed it. It like fit my personal brand in a way that I can't explain without spoiling it. Like, I just loved everything about her. And then the other one, first, I love her because of her name. Her name is Pan Am, like the airline.
Yeah.
Like, her story is about friendship and like finding family, and I really, really loved her. As far as like the other characters go, I would say like most of the other characters are pretty minor. Like you have people who will call you from time to time and be like, I got a job for you, and they're just random fixers who like set you up with gigs, and they're good like background color characters, but I would say like there's some core characters that really rise to the top.
Jake, you and I did a video a while ago with Phil Hornshaw talking about, sex and relationships in Cyberpunk, and, Phil was giving some answers about what it's like to be interacting with these characters, and, you texting them and you talk to them, and obviously you can sleep with them. Did those relationships feel meaningful? And I mean, how, I guess, is the portrayal of sexuality in Night City?
Yeah, so this is kind of one of the question marks we still have. Kelly and I both played as female V. Phil, who's also been played as male V, so we're kind of waiting to see what he finds out. Because based on our experience, it seems like the characters that you can have relationships with are kind of limited. That being said, maybe there's some quest lines we missed that show other characters that you can also have sex with and whatnot. But what I guess stood out to me more is that a lot of these side characters spin off into these, well, not a lot of these side characters, but some of the best side characters spin off into these series of quests, kind of like the Bloody Baron stuff in The Witcher. And I think many people will kind of point to that being one of the best aspects of The Witcher 3 is how they really spun out that character beyond what the main story kind of gave him. And it seems like a lot of these side characters kind of follow that path. Like, as Callie was saying, Pan Am has an entire quest line. Judy has an entire quest line. There's a couple other characters that have that as well. And it doesn't seem like relationships are always at the end of these quest lines. A lot of them are just kind of like, hey, I've become very good friends with this person and they might be able to help me later, or maybe I just got some money for them and got to know their story, because there are some characters, right, that like you may not get a big monetary reward for helping out, but like just knowing their story is satisfying, at least in my experience. So it's weird because the romance didn't seem to play as much of a role as I expected initially. That being said, like Phil said in the thing, you can like pay prostitutes and have sex with them, and there are a bunch of sexual encounters in the game, but they didn't seem like the end of the road for a lot of these relationships, which was kind of refreshing.
Yeah, I had a weird encounter with a corpo woman, and it didn't really, like, it was just a short brief thing where like I showed up at a motel and she was there and she was like, let's bang. But I got it.
Did she genuinely do like a here's my key card?
Here's
it
my
was a
hotel
text
room
that was like, meet me here.
Room 69.
And I showed up maybe 30 hours after that happened because I was like, I have other stuff to do, but I was like finishing up side quests. And I got a dick sword out of it. So I would say it was worthwhile. But I do want to mention, I think the sex scenes are so awkward because it's like
really?
POV porn, and it's like because it's first person. And there's one that I was like, this is awkward but like kind of sweet, and I was like okay with it. But there was one that I was just like squirming in my seat, like I can't wait for this to be over. This is so uncomfortable. I like reloaded my save and I was like, never mind, I want to be friends. So it is weird. It's all POV. So and it's a lot. They're kind of like montages. So you'll see like them being like, oh, and
like a dip to black stuff. And
and then you'll see like their shirts off now, and so it's like you don't have to. It's not the whole.
They all last a little too long, too.
They all last too long, yeah.
Before we move on
really
from relationships and stuff, I did want to ask a question, because Jake, you brought up the Bloody Baron, so this question for both of you is like, that quest has kind of transcended the game it came from. Like, when you think of good writing in video games, the quest that is always brought up is the Bloody Baron from The Witcher 3. Do you think at any point, any quest in Cyberpunk hits those highs?
Yes, maybe.
Interesting.
That's not a good answer.
But I mean, again, it's kind of like a shitty question because I don't want you to spoil.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bloody Baron quest line is hard to match, right? Because the redemption arc there and the different outcomes and the way you kind of walk away from that with a bittersweet feeling is really powerful. And like you're saying, like that quest line feels transcendent. It's kind of hard to say at this point, but I will say there are some arcs for me that were very close to that, and some missions in particular that were surprising and interesting.
Let's skip to the combat.
And really
How does
added a lot
combat
to these
feel?
characters.
Skip to here.
You brought up combat there, so
we're gonna do another ad here, and then we'll go to combat.
First-person combat.
Introducing the Google Room-to-Room
Music
Music Machine.
Like 4 ads
Nest
here or
Audio
some shit.
from Google.
In Cyberpunk, especially given CD Projekt's track record of being traditionally
Tomorrow
third-person
night, 7 p.m. we're playing Cyberpunk.
Does combat feel good? Like,
so I think it depends. Like early on, I was having a bit of trouble with combat because I was so focused on shooting, and I feel like shooting people was one of the only options I really had. And at least on PC, we haven't played on console, so it could be very different on console, but on PC, it feels about as good as I expected. It's better than like a Fallout, other first person RPGs in that sense. Like aiming does feel smoother than that. The lock on or the soft lock feels better than that. That being said, like if you're expecting Call of Duty levels, it's nowhere near that. But once you start to get more abilities and once you try out different things, like for example, I was doing a lot of hacking, as was Callie. I think it starts to shine quite a bit more, because like one example that I found really fun is when I try to stealth, I have an ability that basically blinds enemies. So right when I see the little eye that they're about to see me, I just shock their eyes and like pretty much just blow out their eye sockets, and they can't see me anymore, and I can just sneak around them, grab them, and knock them out. And like that stuff I found super satisfying. Like I had a lot of fun with the hacking, but it took a while to get to that point where I felt comfortable just relying on hacking, because even though I was quote unquote a netrunner or hacker early on, I didn't really feel like I had the tools to do that. I'm currently replaying it now to see if maybe I can lean more into that hacking ability early on. But based on that first playthrough, I felt like I had to use my guns way more than I would have liked to otherwise.
Yeah, I felt the same way, especially because money is kind of hard to come by early on, and you need money to properly upgrade your hacking equipment. Like you need a better processor with more RAM in your brain in order to pull off that the blinding enemies, or there's a variety of stuff. I got a really cool one very late in the game that was like, I was like, this is so cool, I have to equip this right now. But there's like a point early on where you have to have a certain amount of money to progress, and then there's another money gated thing. So it was hard to get to the point, like Jake said, where you feel like an effective hacker. And yeah, I mean, I play a lot of first-person shooters, and I came right off the Call of Duty review, just playing Call of Duty, into this review. And so it's not fair to compare it to Call of Duty. Like Jake said, that's just not a fair expectation, but I did find it clunky. I feel a lot with sensitivity, and I couldn't really find a sensitivity that I found to feel the way I wanted it to feel.
Right.
Which is why I was frustrated by the points in the game where you kind of have to take out a gun, because I was like, I really wish I could just do this the way that I've been building my character to do the whole game.
Right. So, not unlike the game itself, this conversation, lot to cover. Originally, we were only supposed to do 15 minutes, but honestly, like just chatting to you two about the game, I don't care. Let's keep going. But the big thing that I wanted to address with you guys is bugs.
Let's skip bugs and go up to their expectations. Let's go to their final thoughts.
Written form over at GameSpot.com. We're going to have the video review up as soon as...
I also like her painting. Callie's painting has a dog in it. So that's pretty cool. I want to see what see if it lived up to their expectations.
Can, but I mean, it's a huge game, and obviously a lot of complicated thoughts about it. It's been 8 years since it's been announced. The hype levels are out of this world.
Yeah.
Did this game meet your expectations? Was it worth the wait? You know, I'm sorry about that question because that.
Yeah, I mean, quickly to the point of like us recording this, we've recorded this before I've started writing. So
I wasn't going to be like, oh, and the score is.
Yeah, so this is more informal. My kind of like raw, unedited thoughts, because I literally I came to this remote shoot we're doing just from playing in the other room. So like I will mention that you can read my more organized thoughts when I write them now. But yeah, I know it didn't meet my expectations. There's so much in that story that like I really thought it was gonna go further. It was gonna go places. There was gonna be something to say. You know, I that's my biggest issue with Cyberpunk 2077 is I don't know if it has anything to say. Like it brings up all these things and it's like I would have been happier like if it had a point that I totally disagreed with, but I can't find the point. I think there's a lot of strengths. I think they're buried under like this grimy facade of this world that like it's kind of hard to be in sometimes. It's a depressing world by design. I wish that the game did more with that setting and with the cyberpunk genre. In a lot of ways, it feels stuck in the 80s because that's when 2020 was made. But like, I think there's so much that could have been elevated. And yeah, I even hesitate to say it this way because normally I don't talk about what could have been, but like, that's what you go into this game thinking is like, this is about that's what sci-fi and like future stories are about, right? Like what could be, what am I doing here? There's something to do to like create. Could I change the world? You talk about changing the world all the time and I just didn't get that. So
maybe she wanted it to be.
I was disappointed.
Like changing the world, and that's what it's not about. You know what I mean? Maybe
my
she's confused about
expectations
that.
were pretty high, to be fair. I've been waiting for this game for a long time. In some aspects, yes, I would say it exceeded my expectation. I think one thing in particular was just, I thought the writing, especially the side quests, the moment-to-moment dialogue, I thought was really good, especially after playing Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which clearly not rip off that Witcher formula, but lean heavily on that Witcher formula, and the writing to me in those games have always been subpar. However, this feels like the moment-to-moment dialogue, a lot of the quests seem really interesting, what the characters have to say, I'm fully invested in. So in that sense, I'm very impressed with the writing. The story is kind of another topic. I've beaten it once now and I've seen multiple endings and I'm not really entirely sure what the point is either. Kind of to Callie's point, I really enjoy the combat, but I don't know, I guess I was expecting like a little more freedom, I guess, in the approach. In the way the story was told, it was really hard to embrace that freedom, even though it was kind of there. But like I was saying earlier, there was that feeling throughout the entire game where it was like, okay, I'm not really doing what I want to do, I'm doing V's quest, which is great. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I love The Witcher 3 so much, is because you are following Geralt's quest, and Geralt's quest is very compelling. But I kind of went into Cyberpunk expecting it would be more about my story, kind of like in, you know, a traditional role-playing game. And this felt a bit more that I was following V's story.
So they're disappointed that
but I don't
not
know
completely
if
open
V's
to
story
their
was as
but
compelling as The
you're
Witcher
meant to
3.
play as
So
V, right?
Following it, I found it a little bit tougher.
Interesting. Well, we've been going for a long time, so I'm going to call it there. Thank you both so much for hopping on.
So an interesting set of reviews that we had today, chat. I think overall it's been very positive. Very, very, very positive reaction to Cyberpunk. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. But this looks pretty damn close to what I want in a video game. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to be going on in the game. Tomorrow night, we're going to be streaming Cyberpunk at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get updated for the future videos. We're going to be streaming the hell out of Cyberpunk 2077 on the channel. So thank you everyone for joining today. If you do want to support the channel, you can hit that join button. Get awesome emojis like these one. We got Grogu, Baby Yoda. We got a Mando helmet. Maybe we'll add a Cyberpunk one. We'll have to see. We can add a Johnny Silverhands emoji. We got Chewbacca. Another way to support the channel, Patreon. You can find the link in the description of the video. If you want to support the channel, it starts at $1 a month. If you want to get bonus content and all that sort of stuff, all the links to my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are in the description of the video. And yeah, I'm just super excited to play the game, everyone. Really, really, really excited and excited to share my experience with all of you. I'm going to be starting a Nomad playthrough tomorrow night. Looking forward to that, and really, really just excited that Cyberpunk is finally here. It's been like 7-8 years now. So fantastic. It's been super fun. Thanks everyone for watching. Whether you commented in the live chat or not, I really appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Cyberpunk 2077 launch night. Get hype, everyone. Woo! Celebrating time. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you tomorrow night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.